So we're going to take a look at today angle relationships in algebra. Now we already kind of looked at this. I had you try some on your own, but we're going to kind of bring it back together and I'm going to do some with you. So what the directions on this say, it says classify the angle pair as vertical, complementary, or supplementary. So let's think back to what those words actually mean, because they're going to be the key to us setting up all of these problems. So first of all, remember vertical angles are always equal or congruent. Complementary angles means they add up to 90 degrees. Supplementary means they add up to 180. And the reason I'm putting those there is because those are going to be essential, like I said, essential pieces of setting up these problems. So we're going to classify each pair, and then we're going to find the value of x. So what that means, let's look at the first one. Thinking back to what all of these different things look like, number one is a pair of vertical angles. And remember, vertical means they share that vertex in the middle. They're kind of looking at each other. Sometimes I outline them on like that because they make a V on each side. So if we know that vertical angles are congruent to each other, I've got these two algebraic expressions saying what each of those angles is equal to. So I'm going to say, okay, well, I know 8x plus 31 is equal to 6x minus 9 because those are vertical angles, so they're equal. Now, once you got that, this isn't really new stuff. This is going back to our solving equations. So I'm going to start undoing all my stuff to get all my x's on one side and all my numbers on the other. And remember, there's no specific way this has to be done. It's kind of whatever you see first. And by that I mean, like I see first that I want to get this 9 over here. So if I'm subtracting 9 here, to undo it, I add a 9 to both sides. So this is going to become 8x plus 40 equals 16x, and then that goes away. Since I moved my numbers to the left, I'm going to move my variables to the right. I've got a positive 8x right here on the left. So to undo that, I'll subtract 8x. Now that'll go away, and I'll have 40 equals 8x. And then the last thing you got to do, x is being multiplied by x is being multiplied by 8. So to undo that, I'll divide by 8, and x equals 5. Let's keep going, and again, you can pause the video, rewind whenever you want, so that you can, if you get a little lost in that, because I did do it a little quickly. And let's look at number 3. So number 3, again, I'm going to kind of, that first step, classify the type of angle pair I have. Notice we've got a right angle right there. So when I've got a right angle, that's a big hint that you're going to be doing something with complementary angles. And like we said up top, complementary angles means when I put them together, they equal 90. So I'll say my first piece, 3x plus 11, plus my second piece, 8x plus 2. And when I put those together, because I added this, I put that addition sign in between them. When I put them together, they're going to equal 90. Now, one step that people are kind of forgetting here, you're going to do kind of the same thing you did in number 1, but we got a little bit more work to do first. Before I start moving stuff, never forget you got to combine your like terms. So my like terms in this case, 3x and 8x are like terms. I can put those together and get 11x. 11 and 2 are like terms. I can put those together and get 13. And that's still going to equal 90. Now I can start doing some work to get x by itself. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to subtract 13 from both sides. Goes away right there, and I'm left with 11x equals 77. And then my final step, divide each side by 11, and x will be 7 in this case. Now, while we're still kind of on this type of problem, pause the video and do these two right here, 2 and 4, because those are very similar to 1 and 3, just kind of using what you know about these angles to set up problems. Once you do those, let's move down to this group at the bottom. The only way this is different is they're asking us to do one extra step at the end, because instead of just finding x, they want me to find actual angle measures, but I'm going to do everything the same like I did in 1 through 4. This picture is a little bit more complicated. In those first directions where it said determine what kind of angle pair you have, they're talking about the angles that they actually gave you information about. So they gave me information about this angle and this angle. So this more complicated picture, I don't really care about this stuff up here anymore. Now you don't have to cross it out, but sometimes I'll kind of put my hand over it because it's just adding more stuff to the picture that we don't know. Now those two angles that we're left with are supplementary angles. And again, that leads us to our problem setup. I know that supplementary angles, when I put them together, like that, I took the first piece and I added it to the second piece. Together they equal 180. I'm going to do the same thing that I did in number 3. I got to combine some like terms here. I've got some x's I can put together, and I've got some numbers that I can put together. So if I've got 10x plus 3x, that's going to give me 13x. Only thing tricky here, I have negative 22, and I'm putting it together with a positive 20. When I do that, if you got to use Desmos to figure that out, then do it, or think of it like on a number line. I'm starting at negative 22, and I'm going 20 places more to the right. It's going to leave me at negative 2. And again, now I've got a problem that I can actually solve. So I'll add 2 to both sides. Divide by 13. And when I do that math out, it's going to give me x equals 14. But I'm not done yet. Because notice, they even gave you a little hint down here with kind of laying out what answers they're actually looking for. They're looking for measures of angles. So I'm going to go back to my picture. They're looking for the measure of angle SQR. SQR is this guy right here. So all I'm doing, which we did this on the first page, on the kind of that first set of notes, is wherever I see an x, I'm going to put a 14 now, because I know x is 14. So I'll say instead of 10x minus 22, it's 10 times 14 minus 22. And when I do that math out, it'll give me 118 degrees. So that's my first one. And then the second one, they're asking for angle RQT. Luckily, that's the other one that they gave me information about. And I'm going to do the same thing. They said RQT is 3x plus 20. Well, I know x is actually 14. So I'll throw that in there. And when I do that out, I will get that RQT is actually equal to 62. And a good way to check yourself, when you started this problem, you knew that these angles needed to be supplementary. Well, in the end, I got one of them was 118 and one of them was 62. If I put those numbers together, I will get 180. So that's kind of a little check for yourself for, did I actually do this problem right? Okay, let's move on down to number 9. Again, they gave us this kind of ugly picture with all this stuff going on, a lot of it which I really don't care about. They kind of tricked you with putting this right angle in there, because notice the pairs that they gave me this. I'm actually going to outline the angles they gave me, and they gave me this. Everything else, I don't really need. But you should see there, so what they gave me was a set of vertical angles. And these ones are honestly probably should be your favorite, because that's a pretty easy setup. I know vertical angles are equal to each other. So I'll take those two values, or those two expressions they gave me, set them equal. And now we don't have any like terms to combine on either side, so we're good to just start moving stuff around. So I'll add 17 to both sides. Which will leave me with that. Now I can subtract 5x on both sides. And if I divide by 3, I'll get that x equals 10. Now once again, we're going to go back because now they want me to find RTS. Well, RTS, actually let me do that one in, I'll do that in one. RTS is this guy right here. So the measure of angle RTS is not 5x plus 13, it's 5 times 10 plus 13, which will give me 63. Now the second part of this question is a little bit tricky because they're asking me, I'm going to erase this because they're asking me for a kind of weird little piece here. They're asking me for angle PTQ, which is this little tiny sliver. Well, now that I know that RTS is 63, I also know that this guy over here is 63 because they're vertical angles. So I don't really have to plug into that 8x plus minus 17 to figure that out. But if I want to find this little sliver right here, we got to think about what we know about everything around it. We know that this is 90. And if I know this is 90, I know this whole side over here is also 90 because those angles are supplementary. So then if I know the whole angle here is 90, 63 of it is taken up by this angle right here. What I'm looking for is whatever's left. So my math there, PTQ, measure of PTQ is 90 minus 63. So it's 27 degrees. That one's a little tricky. So just because you want to make sure that you're keeping track of what they're actually asking you for and what you know about all the angles. So that one got a little bit ugly, but still not too bad. So why don't you take a second and finish the questions on this page that you haven't. You should already have 2 and 4 done. And I want you to finish 6, 7, 8, and 10. And then we'll move on to another type of question. So on your second set of notes, I want you to take a look at question number 12. Now, I know some of you we're not the biggest fans of word problems, but sometimes these are honestly a little bit easier because there's not all that stuff going on in a picture so that I have to figure out where I need to go. They're telling me straight up right off the bat, angles R and S are complementary angles. When you see that word, you know somehow 90 degrees is going to be involved in this. So if angle M is equal to 2x plus 7 and angle S is equal to 4x minus 13, find the measure of R. So I'm just going to write a little note for myself about what I know. I know that since these are complementary, when I put them together, they're going to equal 90. So that's just me saying, okay, I know measure of angle R plus the measure of angle S equals 90. But I actually have some stuff to put in there. They told me that angle R was 2x plus 7. And they told me angle S was 4x minus 13. So now I've substituted some stuff in, and now this looks exactly like one of the problems from the last page. I got some like terms that I can put together. Again, make sure you're keeping track of these negatives because that's where I see most people making little mistakes. If I have 2 x's and I put it together with 4 x's, I'll get 6 x's. If I have positive 7 x's and I'm subtracting 13 x's, sorry, if I have positive 7 and I subtract 13 from it, it's going to leave me with negative 6. So now we clean that up a little, and now I can work on moving some stuff around. So I'll add 6 to both sides. Divide by 6. And x is going to equal 16. But make sure you're keeping track of what the problem's actually asking you to find. They're asking me to find the measure of angle R. So let's go back to the problem. They told me R was 2x plus 7. But kind of like we did in the other problems, I know that x is 16 now, so I'll throw that in there. And when I do that, I'll find that the measure of angle R is actually 39 degrees. So like I said, without so much going on in the picture, those really aren't too bad. Let's pop down and we'll do one more, because I know you guys hate these ones. Because you kind of have to define some stuff for yourself. So let's look at number 15, and then you're going to try some on your own. So I've got angle P and angle Q are supplementary 180 degrees angles. If angle P is 21 degrees less than twice the measure of Q, find the measure of each angle. So remember back to when we did these problems. We did a couple the other day on some of this angle stuff. But we've been doing these for a while with trying to figure out what two numbers are, if they add up to something, and stuff like that. So they're telling me P is 21 degrees less than twice the measure. This is going to be my complicated one. I have to do a little bit of work there. The measure of Q. So if Q is just kind of chilling, I'm going to call Q X. So the measure of Q equals X. And now I'm done with figuring out what Q is going to be as an algebraic expression. The other one's going to be a little bit trickier, where I have to do some work. So P is 21 degrees less than twice the measure of. So the kind of easier part of this is twice the measure. That's going to be 2 times. And remember, 21 degrees less than, that's one of those turnaround words. So it looks like that. And now I'm going to kind of set it up like I did number 12. I know that P plus Q is 180 because they're supplementary. And now I'm going to put stuff in for them. Well, I called P 2x minus 21, and I called Q x. So I'll substitute those in. I'll combine my like terms. My only like terms there are the x's. And now I can solve this thing for x. I'll add 21. I'll divide by 3. And x is 67. Again, make sure you are paying attention to what the question wants from you. It wants you to find the measure of each angle. Well, I said that the measure of Q was just x. We just found x was 67, so that one's easy. Measure of P, I have to do a little bit of work. I have to plug some stuff in. So I'll plug 67 in for x. And I'll find that that actual measure of P is 113. So why don't you take a second, finish the rest of them on this page. If you have any questions, let me know, and we'll talk about it.